Hey guys, Kyle, the Death Knight of Anime here, bringing you my review for Fire Force Season 2, Episode 5. So, right out of the gate, the adaptation-wise, this episode was very interesting because honestly, just the structure of this episode alone very much gave me a season, very much had a season finale, mid-season finale vibe. Like, honestly, if this episode if this episode like didn't if the title of the episode didn't say that this was the fifth episode of the second season, I would have thought this was the ending to the second season because it just had a lot of those like emotional vibes and story elements that made it feel like we had really reached a climactic conclusion in this a climactic point in the story. But with how the story keeps ramping up each week, maybe that's how the studio wanted us to feel, but it definitely it I think what I'm getting at here is this episode, the way it made me feel is definitely a stark contrast to how I felt reading this in the manga, because when I read this in the manga, it just kind of felt like another conflict with the White-Clad. But because of a multitude of factors like acting, music, and maybe just general way this episode was adapted, it felt like a climactic conclusion or the beginning of the end. Like there's just something about this episode that made me say this feels kind of like this feels like a finale. Like it just honestly, there's no way to say it. It felt like I was watching a finale, but no, we still got a lot more episodes. And if this is the caliber of episodes we're going to be getting from this point on in season 2, I think, yeah, we're definitely in safe hands. We're very safe hands. And the one thing I appreciate about this episode is the opening scene of just the whole fight between Shinra and Charon. And the opening scene of seeing Shinra analyzing Charon's abilities, it's a very simple scene, but one that shows his development in a way where, like, I'm not gonna say Shinra never analyzed or thought through his tactics and his tactics in a fight, but more often than not, his recklessness usually did overtake his common sense, I think. And this is where he's learned. This is episode I think proved he's more or less, even though he ended up letting his guard down in the end, I think this episode did show he kind of still learned from his mistakes compared to the previous season. And like he learned that one thing he learned more than anything else is that in order to defeat an opponent as powerful as the White-Clad, you do need to be more adaptable and take the time and just try and take the time in order to understand how the enemy you're fighting and how they fight, rather than simply rushing in hoping you'll find an opening for victory. Which, and don't get me granted, sometimes it's kind of hard to think and fight at the same time, especially with a fight like especially against a fight like Charon, fight against someone like Charon. But at the same time, you definitely need to try and find any opportunity you can in a fight like this to just find ways in order to fight back, and which in itself is also good at serving as a nice lesson for Shinra about how saying you'll be a hero isn't going to do much if you don't have the ability to back it up, as well as how much of a difference there is between fighting infernals and fighting people with a dual burst. Like infernals are just, well, for lack of a better term, mindless zombies. But people with a dual burst actually have a mind of their own, and they can think, and they're just like, they're everyday people just with abilities, and so they definitely have a lot, so they can definitely think through their actions a lot more. But and the thing is, we obviously got a little bit of this. We obviously got a little bit of this in the first season, but this definitely felt more like a hard knocks lesson for Shinra in that regard. And with him, he's basically applying anything he's learned from the previous season into this moment. And yeah, it's just really nice to see Shinra like actually like it's just really nice to see Shinra kind of like just kind of think through the implications, and just kind of thinking of strategy. Just it's nice to just get these moments where Shinra like can basically you can be where it's just nice to get these moments where you see Shinra just kind of like like think tactfully and think what's the best way in order to defeat my opponent, kind of thing. Like this we got a lot of it this episode, and I really appreciated that. Um, Also, on a more personal level, though, through one of the things though is that we definitely get a very nice flashback with Obi, and another thing that was definitely very interesting about this episode in the fight between Shinra and Charon is that we get to see Shinra use that taboo name of Devil that he's been cursed with his entire life, and use it as his and like and come in and use it and basically make it his own, and basically make that symbol his own and make it into his sort of own, like his and he's with him using that symbol that he's been cursed with his entire life, and use it as his, like, come into his own and use it as his own symbol of heroism. Like the devil, the devil for as the devil obviously has been portrayed in many times as an evil being, but here pretty much Shinra is using it as his own version, as his own symbol of heroism, and I really appreciate that. And yeah, let's talk art and animation, because once again, not only was it great, but this episode kind of showcased that within this season, these two elements, especially art and animation, genuinely feel like they get better and better with each episode, with very few moments where it feels like the quality is dipping. And I think a large part of why that is because of the consistency factor. Because I hate to keep bringing up season one, because I do enjoy season one, but you could definitely tell there were certain areas where they had to cut corners for obvious reasons. But I think being stuck doing that also affected the overall quality of the product itself, and how the great moments of art and animation in season one were just stuck with moments. Again, and that created a situation where season's one adaptation ended up feeling largely inconsistent. But with the weight of limitations lifted from the studio's shoulders this time around, you could definitely tell they're just running as wild and free as possible now. Like Crunch David Production is just having a ball with this material now, and it genuinely shows. Like the past couple episodes, honestly, and have been just fun. This is just like this is heart-stopping, genuine fun. Like I've never, like, again, there were moments in season one where I felt like this, but like consistently, I think we're gonna get a lot more of this, where it's just great emotional, like, it just gives us great emotional storytelling, and it shows the art and animation just kind of just gives us a lot of hype, honestly, I think, in this case. Obviously, one thing to talk about with this episode is the amount of teamwork we get between the Fire Force companies, and showing the amount of coordination between the companies needed to take down the demon, which again shows that this is a series that thrives on the idea that victory can only be achieved through teamwork. And I love that, but through all of that, the one who really had really shined through all this was Licht. Obviously, because it was his plan, but this episode showed that even though he's not necessarily a fighter, he's just as capable in the field as he is in the lab. And as us, the viewer, we see how capable he is at facing down the absolute worst case scenario and still coming up with the best way to combat it. And it's one of those moments where everyone got to shine, but Licht was at the center of it, because this episode really showed just how much of a great tactical strategist Licht is. Although seriously, I do need to take a moment to call Obi out, because seriously, bro, you couldn't make a shot that is basically what's the eccentric equivalent of shooting shooting a monster in an arcade game. Really, bro? I'm even I admit I'm a terrible shot, and even I know I could have made that shot, bro. Like, what the hell, Obi? Get it together, man. I'm just saying. Sorry, I had to call him out because that was one of the few times, even in the manga, where he kind of legitimately annoyed me a bit. Now, when it comes to anime, the one thing when it comes to anime, the one thing I really touch on is the soundtrack, because mostly I like to focus on story, but I definitely want to talk about it here because not only did each musical cue feel perfectly timed to the moment, but for me, the music did a very good job at capturing how quickly things could basically turn on their head, like especially how it managed to capture the victorious feeling of Shinra overcoming Charon, then immediately switch gears to this more frenzied theme when things immediately switch on its head and Charon takes out Shinra, and taking out Shinra, serving as sort of an emotional reinforcement of how quickly things switched from hopeful to urgent, and it was strangely despite this strangely it's one of those where despite the switch it still felt like they were built like the recently musical cues that felt like they were still building on top of each other despite the switch. And the best music I think can do that is that it can build on the moment. Of course, and of course when the demon was defeated of course the peak of it was when the demon was defeated in the end. That's of course where the music really got great. But yeah, guys, that's all I got for this review. If you enjoyed the video, like, comment, subscribe. Follow me on Twitter, Facebook, and Mr. Crunchyroll. Death Knight of Anime, signing off. Later, guys.